Well, hello there, Dippers, and welcome back to episode 71 of the Knuckle Sammich podcast, the official MMA podcast of Sauce on the Sign. As always, Dippers, I'm your host, Drake, joined by the man, the myth, the legend, the man who gave us 2 dog winners last week, Mr. Thomas R. Shackelford.
Good morning.
Dippers, today we are going to talk about the card from last weekend, headlined by Weili Zhang, picking up the women's strawweight title over Jessica Andrade. And we will talk about UFC 242, which has maybe the most bizarre start time of any pay-per-view card we've probably ever seen. So, producer, wait and see. Before we get to any of that, you know what to do. Welcome to the Knuckle Sammich podcast with Thomas R. Shackelford, a Sauce on the Side production. All right, Mr. Shackelford, so does it feel good to be back on top?
It does. I wish I would have told people to bet. I mean, those were just like, this and that, you know.
You were very confident in our boy, Jing Liang.
Yeah, I was confident in both those wins, especially the Zhang one, Weili Zhang, but it did surprise me on how the game, because I said, hey, she's just as strong as Andrade. She's quicker than Andrade, and I think like just overall power, I thought she was going to be close to Andrade. And she opened that fight with just some leg kicks, some jabs. Andrade, the whole fight lasted like 30 seconds. So it's hard to play out a huge thing. But a couple low kicks, couple jabs. Andrade got frustrated, had to move in quick, and just got hit with like 3 big right hands and then about 50 elbows and knees after that. The Jing Liang fight was actually a really fun fight. Jing Liang looked really good, man. His boxing, he was slipping and dipping. That Silva guy, he was highly touted.
Huge favorite too.
Yeah, I didn't realize he was that big of a favorite. I mean, you got to think in it's not his hometown. I mean, they're in China. That's as hometown as you get. UFC doesn't go to China that often. So no, it's not like Weili Zhang, or it's not like Jing Liang or Weili Zhang is from that city in China. It's slipping me right now, but it's in China, so that's a hometown fight for them. They played off the crowd, man. That crowd was insane. I don't know, that crowd would rival some of the most rowdy, like, Brazilian ones you've heard, because you can hear them on the TV, you know what I mean? Like, some crowds you don't hear much. When they fought in Jersey a few months back, it was like first fight of the night, within 30 seconds, there was people doing the woo birds, the woo all night long. I think people were, and that card was an early card. It started like noon. Like, I think people in Jersey were trashed by noon and just wanted people to die. So the crowd, they fed off the crowd. Weili's, both of them, man, looked awesome. Jing Liang, he's like I said, he was slipping and dipping, moving. Got a couple knockdowns in the later round. Just really outclassed Silva. In a fight that I guess not a lot of people thought he was going to win in. No,
a lot of people did not, because the odds were very stacked against him. So UFC 242, actually, I had mentioned this to you earlier. Basically, everybody's a huge favorite or a huge dog on the main card. This is probably the biggest discrepancy of odds as we've had all year with the main card itself. I think the closest fight we have is a minus 155 favorite to a plus 125 dog. Everything else is minus 200 or bigger. Actually, minus 230 or bigger. We have quite a few minus 300s on this card. So we're gonna kind of do this in reverse order. We're gonna go ahead and give you the main event of the undercard, and then work our way up to Poirier and Khabib. So the first fight that we have, Andrea Lee taking on Joanna Calderwood. Calderwood seems to find herself as the dog no matter who she fights. She's a plus 180 dog to Jessica Lee, who is a minus 230 favorite. Mr. Shackelford, what's the pick?
I'm going to go I'm gonna go KGB, Andrea Lee. I think, I hate to bring it up, but she had some issues with some domestic violence. Her like husband or boyfriend was her coach. He was the dude that got in trouble because he had a Nazi symbol tattooed on his arm. They split ways, and there was some domestic violence things going on. Since that all happened, she's really been a different fighter, man. I don't know if she also changed. I mean, obviously that dude's not her coach anymore, but I believe she changed camps. But you have to go all the way back to 2016, the last time she lost a fight. So she was already doing well, but she beat up Ashley Evans Smith pretty bad, which is a big fight. Montana De La Rosa was a big fight, her last one. I think those were the last two since all those issues happened. I think her boxing, physically, she's a very muscular woman. Physically, she'll have a strength and I think a little bit of a power advantage over Calderwood. I do think Calderwood's overall the better striker as far as, low kicks, high kicks, punches mixed in and everything. But I think Andrea Lee's boxing will be a little bit better. And I think that's where she's going to win this fight.
Okay, I'm actually looking forward to that fight. I really like Calderwood.
I do too, man. She's one of my favorites. She's Scottish, I believe. She's got the cutest Scottish accent ever, but then she's a complete badass. It's crazy. I thought she won her last fight.
I did too.
Pretty hands down. I felt like Chuka again. I can't say her name. Got a gift there. So hate to pick against Calderwood, but I really think Andrea Lee, she seems to be on a mission right
Yeah, I was actually at that last fight that she had. Whenever I had also thought she won. Everybody at the United Center thought she won.
Really?
I would like to see her win again. Unfortunately, the Shackelford Luck will not be with her this week. So next fight we have, I know I'm going to butcher the name, we have Marbek Tuzmasov fighting Carlos Diego Figueiredo. Taismov opens as a minus 265 favorite over Carlos Diego Figueiredo. Plus 205. This is where we continue to have the discrepancy of odds. Mr. Shackelford, who's going to win?
Marbek, whatever his name is. I think he's probably the pretty steady win. I mean, he's on a 7-fight win streak. He's out of Khabib's camp. Kind of a highly touted guy. Diego Ferreira, we know him. He is on a 4-fight win streak. He's got very good jiu-jitsu. But his hands are rudimentary at best, I want to say. He's got big power, and he will wing some punches from left field, but it's not super crisp. I don't think it's crisp enough to be able to keep the Marbek dude off of him, wrestling-wise. So, gonna go, you said you butchered the name. I'm sure we're going to butcher a lot of names on this. And another thing we notice is half the fighters on this card are out of that Dagestani Khabib camp. So look for this card to be wrestling heavy. And when I say, hey, they're not going to be able to keep him off of him, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that Marbek has not fought in the United States since 2011.
No kidding.
Yeah, because all of his fights look like they were either in Russia, Sweden, Germany, Croatia, Netherlands.
A little bit of weirdness there. Some of those guys can have some visa issues. We've talked before about some of the ties, and I'm not pointing out that it's the fighter's fault, but when you come from those super dictator communist countries, if you shine any at all, those dictators and rulers just kind of cling to you, and sometimes it can be hard to get in certain countries whenever you have some dictator, acting like he's your best friend because you're winning fights. So
yeah,
that's probably why he's fighting in Abu Dhabi.
Next fight we have is our former guest Curtis Blades opens as one of the biggest favorites on the main card, minus 450 over Shamil Aburakanov, who is a plus 325 dog. Mr. Shackelford, does our man Curtis Blades pick up another win?
Yeah, you got to go Blades here. I mean, he's looked he's looked amazing, except for against Francis Ngannou.
Yes.
I mean, that's it. And it's unfortunate because Francis is still at the top of the division. It's one of those guys, like, he can beat everybody in his bracket, but there's always one guy that just kind of has his number right now. But he's coming off that. He made Justin Willis look like an actual baby. He made Big Baby look like an actual baby. The Shamil guy is coming off some good wins, but I think Blades just outworks him. I think his stand-up and his wrestling is just too much.
Yeah, I would happen to agree there. Next fight we have Islam Makhachev, who is a minus 325 favorite, over Davey Ramos, who is a plus 250 dog. Mr. Shackelford, do we get our first dog winner of the night here?
Going Islam. No. Going Islam. Again, out of Khabib's camp, this Islam guy is the most touted guy. He is the one that they are talking up like he is going to take over 55 once Khabib leaves. I don't know that he's that good. I don't know that he's that dominant, but he's essentially the same style as Khabib. He'll throw a few punches, get in, get on top, and he's there until it's over. So look for him to do the same thing. There's probably 3 or 4 fights on this card that you're looking like it's going to be the same fighter. It's going to be the same looking fighter. He's going to have his Amish beard going, short hair, just trying to take people down.
Yeah. Next fight we have Edson Barboza at a minus 155 dog to Paul Felder, who is a plus 120, or Edson Barboza is a minus 155 favorite to Paul Felder, who is a plus 125 dog. I almost just confused Shackelford, who's finally figured out how the betting odds work.
Don't you do it.
And Mr. Shackelford, do we have a dog howl in this fight? This is by far, in my opinion, the closest fight on this card.
I am going to pick Felder. These two have fought once before. And this was when Barboza was just murdering everybody. He had like two TKOs via leg kick. Just nobody wanted to fight him. And Felder was relatively unknown at the time. I'd seen him fight maybe once or twice. It was one of those first UFC on Fox cards, like real early in that time. And I thought Felder won the fight. He didn't. They gave Barboza a decision, but I thought Felder won. And now you fast forward a couple years here. Barboza's had some wins, some losses. That kind of fear factor is not there right now. He's coming off a KO from Justin Gaethje. But the main thing is, and I know Fletch would hate to hear this, Felder he's been campaigning for this fight since he lost that last one. I don't think I've ever heard him say anything but, I want that fight back. And he's got it back now. He's got a couple more years experience. It really, when you look down his list, really the only ones that jump out is the Mike Perry loss, which he broke his arm within the first round. So
and still fought it to a split decision.
Yeah, and still almost won the fight.
Yeah.
So
and we've seen how good Mike Perry has gotten.
He bumped up a weight class, still dealt with all the power there, and still almost won the fight. So I'm looking for him to be a little more variety in attack, but this time I think he is going to be the aggressor. Whereas last time maybe he countered a little bit more, although I thought he won. That was really what I thought the judges looked at for the decision, was he wasn't necessarily the one pressing the action. He was just maybe landing a little bit more, it felt like. So look for Felder to be coming forward. He didn't seem affected by the leg kicks last time. I don't expect that to be a problem this time. That one should be a fun fight.
Yes. Last up, we have the main event. We have Khabib Nurmagomedov, who is on a obvious 27-fight win streak. Has not fought since he fought Conor McGregor. He opens as a plus 450 favorite, which is the biggest favorite on the main card outside of Curtis Blades, to Dustin Poirier, who is a plus 325 dog coming off of his win against Max Holloway. Mr. Shackelford, is there any way Dustin Poirier is able to crack the code that is Khabib and win this fight?
Man, I don't think so. I do love Dustin Poirier. Whenever he first started him, I remember in the 55 division, him and Eric Koch was another guy I liked a lot out of Milwaukee. I just liked their style. At the time when they came in, there just wasn't a lot of guys that were good kickboxers and boxers that were really going for the finish and had a really good submission game, which both those guys did. So I've watched him a long time. He's had some ups and downs in there, but mostly it's been ups. I mean, he's beat a ton of people. When you look through his record and stuff, I just don't recall him fighting somebody that's just going to be trying to drag him to the mat the whole time. Now, there's a Cub Swanson in there. Diego Brandau's in there, who was known as a ground guy. There's a couple guys in there that were more jiu-jitsu guys, but not wrestlers, So we know even some of the top-level jiu-jitsu guys' takedowns just are not that fantastic. So I look at the fight like this. I think that it'll go a lot like Khabib fights, where he'll get an early takedown, hang out, not do a lot of damage. He'll be minimized a little bit, but eventually he's just going to keep taking him down till he gets him frustrated and probably gets the TKO stoppage. I don't know that it'll knock him out. I'm looking for maybe a round 3, round 4 TKO or submission here. Jiu-jitsu does not hey, he shot a shot, I'm going to hit a guillotine or a darce or something like that. That's been pretty ineffective against Khabib. He's got good jiu-jitsu. He's really, really, really well versed in his top game and pressure. I just don't see a way Poirier wins here. He is a southpaw, I believe, so that could pose a little bit of a problem. But really, I mean, we've seen Khabib, he doesn't really care about the punching. He is just 100% gonna take him down. I just, when I've been playing it over in mind, I just don't see any way Poirier gets a win. It would legitimately shock me if he got the win here.
No, I would happen to agree with this, but rarely have we seen a guy transition weight classes, and correct me if I'm wrong, the first time a guy goes up, recently at least, in weight, they've won the title.
It's almost every time.
Because you have TJ Dillashaw versus Henry Cejudo. The lighter man won, even though they did come down in weight. Mm-hmm. Then you have Henry Cejudo going up in weight and end up winning the belt. And then, so there's 2 instances there. DC did the same exact thing.
Amanda Nunes,
same exact thing. So I'm pretty sure that every time somebody's transitioned a weight class that was the lighter fighter, they ended up winning. Yeah. Especially probably since Conor did it first. Yeah. I think they're 5-0.
The only one that didn't was Holloway went up to fight Poirier, and then DC in his last one. But you're still looking at 5-2. I mean, the weight, him going up in weight was really was very good for him. I didn't think it was going to be good for him because at 45 he always seemed to be out muscling guys. And I thought, well, when he goes up to 55, that it's just not, it won't be the same. But it really transitioned well for him. The problem with that is Khabib walks around at like 200 pounds. So really, Khabib's a 70-pounder that can make 55. Barring any really, really, really bad weight cuts and just drop, that's something you always got to worry about with Khabib. Him making it to the cage is generally his biggest battle, it seems like.
Right. This fight, I just don't know how it's going to play out. I have a feeling I know how it's going to play out, but I think this could be one of those interesting fights where, we even seen Conor get rocked by Khabib just because he's so focused on stopping a takedown that Poirier could really just get himself into a bad situation. And I hope Poirier doesn't go out there just thinking, automatically take down first. I kind of hope Poirier just fights his own fight here.
That's his best option. I mean, when you look at Khabib's last 2 fights, there's some chinks in the armor. Conor showed even more. It really started with Iaquinta. Iaquinta showed that, hey, if you can get up off bottom, have good enough jiu-jitsu to get up off bottom and force him to keep taking you down, he gets tired.
Yes.
And, even in those later rounds, Iaquinta got busted up a little by Khabib's jab, but it was because he was letting him. He was letting Khabib punch him so he could be close enough to land his shots. Now, Iaquinta has a problem. Sometimes his punches come short, and that's what happened. His punches weren't landing. Excuse me, guys. I'm sorry. His punches weren't landing.
I like your voice a little hoarse, though.
It's a little okay.
It makes it a little mystic.
And then Conor even showed more. Look, Conor's not a wrestler. He didn't wrestle his whole life. He defended a ton of takedowns by Khabib. In the 3rd round, it felt like he won the 3rd round. 4th round, he did get knocked down and then got up and still was, kind of pressing the fight. So there's been chinks in Khabib's armor his last 2 fights, but again, he won them both. He won one 50-45 across the board almost, and then Conor, he got the neck crank, jaw crusher, rear naked choke there. It's one of those things. If Poirier can keep him off with a jab, and when he's rushing in, landing with a big punch, he's got a puncher's chance. But anybody that's never sparred or boxed or done anything, you just don't realize how fast your arms fill up with blood wrestling and then trying to punch with your arms never fully extending, never getting that full whip of your punches. Your arms just blow up, man, and when they blow up, they're just not moving fast, and they're a lot harder to knock somebody out with.
Yeah, I think something that's really playing into Poirier's favor, because I'm trying to find any reason to kind of give us hope on Poirier. He's had 2 fights that were 5-round fights that went past the 3rd round in the last 16 months. Obviously, Justin Gaethje, a lot different fighter than what we have with Khabib, and he was able to pull off a 4th round knockout. And then he had the Max Holloway fight, which obviously went 5 rounds, but Max Holloway is a much different fighter than Khabib. Yeah. I hope this fight's good. Unfortunately, this has a very weird start time. It's right in the middle of college football. I think
it's in Abu Dhabi, so...
Yes, but when was the last time we've had a pay-per-view that started this early?
Yeah, true. To bring it back, the last time they were in Abu Dhabi, I believe, was BJ Penn, Frankie Edgar 1, which then we didn't have ESPN Plus and pay-per-views they had, but what they would do is they would tape it and then play it later. So me and my friends went to Buffalo Wild Wings and watched it in the evening, but you could look up the results like online during the day. So this is just kind of a new thing where they're in Abu Dhabi again, but you can watch it live because of the Plus app. To my knowledge, this is the first time this has happened. And I mean, will this be the 2nd week of college football?
Yeah, because they have week 0, week 1, and then 2.
Okay,
so week 2.
So this is week 2. Definitely, it'll be interesting because Khabib. I mean, people say like he doesn't have a lot of followers, this and that, but if you look at like the embedded or any of the little short clips that UFC does, if Khabib's in them, it's well over 1 million viewers.
Yes.
So just like the China last week, the UFC is really kind of turning into a global. It used to be just, if you were an MMA fan, you were watching from Brazil, Japan, America type thing, So if you were a Pride fan, you knew the pay-per-views were going to be on super early in the morning. But now we're kind of moving in this thing where it's kind of the new age where they were just in China. Now they're going to Abu Dhabi. There's a lot more people in China than, and in those Middle Eastern countries than most people realize. It's opening them up. I don't know if you know this. Did you know they opened a UFC PI in China?
Oh, wow.
It's supposed to be like 10 times bigger than the one that they have out in Vegas.
That's insane. I did not know that.
The UFC is really going just incredibly deep into these foreign markets. I mean, we may have a time in the near future where the UFC is not even really based out of Vegas. I mean, maybe it almost may be like an NFL or an MLB where you have like a Dana White based in Vegas, but then you have a Dana White in another guy, the Chinese Dana White in China, the Muslim Dana White in the Middle East. I think that's where we're headed. I think that's where things are headed.
Yeah, I think this card, whenever we get the pay-per-view results, I think it's going to be a huge testament to how much of a global market this sport has become. Because, really, I don't know if they're going to sell that well in the United States, but I still think this card will do fine.
It'll be like one of those movies that kind of like doesn't flop in the U.S. but doesn't do very well in the U.S. But then in the U.K. or China or Japan, it just is like the biggest movie of all time. You know what I'm saying? I think that's what we're going to look at, because look, football is king in America. Even though right now football is probably the ratings are the worst they've ever been. Football by far still, even college, Saturday and Sunday during the fall is football time.
Yeah.
So I think in America this isn't going to do very well. I think overseas and we kind of talked about it a little bit. I hate to get into those type things, but a lot of those fighters that are from the Khabib camp are Muslim fighters. They're in the Middle East. So you got a card with 24 guys on it. 12 of them are Muslim fighters fighting in the Middle East, a predominantly Muslim country. It's going to be, I bet you it sells incredibly well.
I do too. I think it's going to be it's going to be kind of odd to look at, especially being from the United States. A lot of people are going to be like, well, I didn't even watch that card. And it was one of the top grossing ones of this, the last 5 years. So I'm actually interested to see more so how the fight does just from a pay-per-view standpoint. More so than really the fights at this point, because it is something new that we really haven't seen before. But I think it's a good tactic that Dana White and the UFC guys are really pulling out there, because I think it's going to do well.
I think you'll be sitting there Saturday watching your college footballs, and you'll get an update like,
"Oh, I'm going to watch this card. I have to watch this card."
Khabib retains his title, or Dustin Poirier shocks Khabib in Abu Dhabi. You'll be watching the, I don't know,
LSU, Texas.
Okay, you'll be watching LSU, Texas with Lex, and Lex is going to be over there blowing up because LSU's beating Texas, and he's going nuts, and this is supposed to be their 14-year magic run.
Their
comeback year, and you're going to get a big blip. Maybe Texas dude's running down the sideline, and you can't see him because they're running a blip that Poirier shocked Khabib in Abu Dhabi.
It'll be interesting to say the least. So, Mr. Shackelford, any news notes that we have to hit on before we wrap this show up?
Nothing crazy this week. I did see a funny headline that Junior Dos Santos has had a good start at Dancing with the Stars in Brazil. I did Bare Knuckle FC. Did you know they did another show about 2 weeks ago? It was free on YouTube.
I didn't see that. Free on YouTube. Dude, that's where we've gotten.
Yes, they estimated like 200,000 or 2 million pay-per-view buys with the one that we purchased and watched, and they came back like they had like 13,000 pay-per-view buys. Like it was insanity how low. I forgot to talk about that next week, but they just announced that Bigfoot Silva is going to fight Gabriel Gonzaga, which is no good. I mean, both those guys have had like 10 consecutive drop-dead KO losses. It was a week of kind of just weird news and notes. So hopefully next week we have a little more substantial news of maybe some fights being signed and such.
Yeah, I hope so. Little before we wrap it up, on UFC 242, we have a lot of good fights outside of the main card. At least some notable fighters. A guy you and I really like, Zach Cummings. He will be fighting this weekend. Bilal Muhammad, he'll be fighting this weekend. So you have some names on the undercard that should realistically just make it an all-around good news of fights, or a good night of fights, or good day of fights, depending on where you are in the world. So, Mr. Shackelford, anything else before we wrap this up?
Nope. Have a good week. Hopefully Texas wins for Lex. I cannot imagine the storm of tweets Lex will fire out Saturday if Texas does not win.
And on that note, for Drake, For Mr. Shackelford, Dippers, as always, stay saucy.